tonight, ever since we saw the pre-dawn headlines that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps was taking credit for shooting down an unmanned U.S. military drone near the Strait of Hormuz. Now, the Iranian government and the U.S. government both confirm that Iran downed a U.S. drone. Other than that, there are differences. Iran says the drone had violated Iranian airspace, and that's why they shot it down. The U.S. government says no. The aircraft was operating in international airspace, and so Iran should not have shot it down, and it's therefore a terrible provocation. In either case, though, there is no disagreement between the two governments that the thing was shot down. It is also worth being doubly, triply clear about the fact that this was a machine. This is a remotely piloted machine. No U.S. personnel were physically involved or physically at risk in this shoot down. The Pentagon says the drone was an RQ-4A Global Hawk, which I'm not even sure if that's exactly the nomenclature you should use to describe it. We do know this is a fairly large aircraft. It's designed for surveillance. We think of drones as being, if you think of commercially available drones, you think of things that can be the size of, old-fashioned model airplanes. This is more like the size of an airplane. Earlier today, the Defense Department released video that they say shows the American drone being taken out by an Iranian surface-to-air missile. You can sort of see what looks like a trail of smoke after the drone is hit and as it falls toward the earth. This incident happened last night in terms of U.S. East Coast time. That means it was just before dawn today in Iran, 8.5-hour time difference. This afternoon, the White House held a bipartisan briefing for top congressional leaders. They summoned the top Republicans and the top Democrats from both the House and the Senate, along with the bipartisan leaders from the House and Senate Intelligence Committees and the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, which is a serious kind of briefing. Despite the obvious tension at home and abroad, I should say, we got the initial reports about what happened here very early on this morning. The story actually hasn't developed very much over the course of the day in terms of assertions from either side, in terms of what we've heard from our own government. I mean, we've definitely got these clear assertions that that drone was definitely shot down by Iran. We've got Iran's clear assertion that they did the same thing. The president today, in his words, said that this was definitely a big mistake by Iran. I mean, we've seen that kind of development in this story, but beyond that, we don't know what Iran might do next. We don't know what the United States might do next. We don't know whether the president intends to respond in some way or, frankly, who he would task with carrying out any sort of military response, if that's what he wants to do. His last acting defense secretary is supposedly leaving office tomorrow, which presumably means the new acting defense secretary is just starting tomorrow, maybe? In either case, no confirmed official is in charge at the Pentagon, nor has there been one in charge at the Pentagon since General Jim Mattis left more than 6 months ago. So coming up on the show, I'm very happy to say we're going to be speaking here in person, in studio with Ben Rhodes. Ben Rhodes has extensive experience with Iran as a national security and diplomatic matter. He served as Deputy National Security Advisor to President Obama, and Ben Rhodes is going to be joining us here live in just a moment to give us his perspective on all this, how this story may develop, what we should watch for from our own government, and how serious this all is. So Ben Rhodes coming up. Ben Rhodes was President Obama's Deputy National Security Advisor. He served in the White House for Barack Obama's entire presidency. He was known to be very close to the president. He worked on some of the most consequential foreign policy decisions of the Obama presidency. He led back-channel negotiations with Cuba. He worked on the Osama bin Laden raid. When the Obama White House began secret discussions about a potential nuclear deal with Iran for them to curtail their nuclear program, Ben Rhodes was one of the few people on the inside working those negotiations from the American side. President Obama, of course, signed that agreement in Vienna in July 2015, a historic achievement, taking a nuclear Iran off the table for the foreseeable future. Since President Trump took the United States out of that Iran deal unilaterally, since he started to undo all of that work as fast as he could, Ben Rhodes, now a former government official, has spoken out, saying the president has created a destabilizing situation for the Middle East and for the world. With today's news about Iran shooting down a drone, a U.S. drone near the Strait of Hormuz, with the president now openly flirting with a potential war with Iran, Honestly, Ben Rhodes is the brain I want to hear from on this right now. Joining us now, Ben Rhodes, Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama. Ben, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rachel.
What is your top-level take on how serious the situation is with Iran right now, today, after these reports about this drone shoot-down?
Unfortunately, I think it's incredibly serious. And Rachel, like you said, this was very predictable, right? When Trump pulled out of the Iran nuclear agreement, since then, all he's done is stack provocation on provocation from us. More sanctions, designating the Iranian Revolutionary Guard as a terrorist organization, which his own administration, the Defense Department, reportedly didn't want him to do because they thought that Iran would hit back in some fashion. The threats emanating from him and Bolton towards Iran. And so what ends up happening is the cumulative effect of those threats pushes the Iranians to respond in kind. And now what we're seeing potentially with the fires on the tankers and with the shoot down of this drone is the Iranian hardliners saying, we've taken enough and we're going to begin to push back. And you saw that with the announcement that they're going to start reaccumulating stockpile of nuclear material. So the dangerous moment we're in, Rachel, is the Trump administration is escalating and now the Iranians are escalating. And we're counting on those two actors to find an off-ramp.
Yeah.
And that's a very destabilizing moment.
I feel like as a lay observer of national security things, somebody with no particular expertise in the matter, but somebody who just watches it from the outside, when John Bolton became National Security Advisor, when Mike Pompeo became Secretary of State, we were all able to sort of blithely assert that these were among the hardest hardliners in U.S. government and U.S. national security circles ever in terms of the issue of Iran. I've never thought specifically about either why that might be, why they might be such hardliners Iran, or what that might mean they want to do. It's hard to believe that what they want is a land war with Iran, with the United States invading. It's hard to see what value they would see in shooting missiles at Iran. Do you understand from their point what they might see as the desired outcome here?
Bolton in particular has been outspoken in calling for not just a military strike on Iran, but regime change in Iran. You cannot get regime change through just a missile strike. That is a significant military action. That is a war, in my opinion. And if you look at what's happened since Bolton was appointed, it was after he was appointed that we pulled out of the Iran deal. It was after Jim Mattis resigned as Secretary of Defense 6 months ago that we saw this escalation really take off. And we know from reports that Mattis was apparently a break at the Situation Room table and saying we shouldn't pull out of the Iran nuclear deal. We should be cautious in how we approach this. Since we've been without a Secretary of Defense for 6 months, which has never happened before in the history of the United States, this thing has taken off. And John Bolton literally has the controls of the plane and is flying it. And what we know about John Bolton is he's committed to regime change in Iran.
We have no defense secretary. As you said, we won't have a defense secretary for a long time. We have a new acting one who maybe is taking over tomorrow. That sort of vacuum within U.S. leadership obviously is felt specifically in terms of the absence of Mattis, the type of role that you're describing. Given that sort of lacunae in American sort of chain of command and the way these decisions are making, how do you think the U.S. government is going to proceed? Not how should they proceed, but what do you think this administration is going to do next?
Well, it's very simple, right? Usually you have a debate around the table. This is really John Bolton and Mike Pompeo, I think, wanting to take us into some type of military confrontation with Iran. And Donald Trump, literally Donald Trump is the guy we're counting on to potentially be the break because he knows politically that runs against what he said, that he wasn't going to get us into more wars. A normal administration, Rachel, would be saying, yes, if they did shoot down a U.S. drone that was not in Iranian airspace, and that remains to be determined, by the way, because I don't know that we can just trust the administration on this, but you would take this to the international community, and you'd be trying to get other nations to join with you in condemning this and potentially seeking some type of sanction on the Iranians. My concern is, if you think that you can just start a military confrontation with Iran and it won't escalate, you don't know anything about the mindset of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, the Iranian regime. They can retaliate in Iraq, in Afghanistan, in Israel, in Lebanon, across that region, potentially terrorist attacks beyond. This is not a simple war. This is a bigger, more sophisticated country than Iraq or Afghanistan was. And look at how those wars went. So I think we have to be taking this moment incredibly seriously. And I hope that I'm wrong. I hope that this doesn't lead to a war. But I think the risk of it is such that people need to be making more noise. And some Democrats are doing that in Congress. I'd like to see more saying this would be illegal. This would be potentially catastrophic. And I'd like to see them saying, you're not authorized to do this. And we want a resolution to prevent a war with Iran.
Ben Rhodes was Deputy National Security Advisor under President Obama, intimately involved with their negotiations and high-level diplomacy over the Iran nuclear deal and other matters. Thanks for helping us understand this tonight. I feel like we're going to be calling on you a lot in the next few days. Thanks,
Rachel.
Appreciate it.
Good to see you.
Well, we hope you enjoyed our video. If so, please give this video a thumbs up and hit that like button. Thank you for tuning in to the Center of Political Debates, Public and Press Discussions. We invite you to join our political news and debate community. Join by clicking the subscribe button below. Hit the bell button for notification of more breaking news political videos. And we also invite you to join our Facebook debate group and voice your political input. You can see the Facebook link in the description below. We'll see you soon with our next breaking news videos.